Well, President Obama placing the blame on the GOP for his forcing of hand on immigration.
Had the House of Representatives allowed that kind of bill a simple yes or no vote, they would have passed with support from both parties. And today it would be the law. But for a year and a half now, Republican leaders in the House have refused to allow that simple vote.
Well, but in 2009 and 2010, the president had Democratic control of both the House and the Senate and didn't pass immigration back then. Here to react, the White House Press Secretary Josh Earnest. Josh, we know you've had a busy night, a busy morning here. We thank you for joining Fox and Friends. Good morning to you. Why now?
Well, look, Elizabeth, you pointed it out. The president's been waiting more importantly, the country has been waiting for 500 days for House Republicans to act on a compromise, common sense, bipartisan legislation that passed the United States Senate that would have reformed our immigration system, finally brought some accountability to the system in a way that would be good for the economy, would create jobs, would make a historic investment in border security, and would finally bring out of the shadows the 11 million people who are in this country already.
Let me ask you this, because I think undoubtedly those who have come to this nation the legal way, and this nation is better because we have immigrants who have come here legally, gone through an expensive and long process through our system. How is this better for them? I mean, essentially, they are saying today that the president is taking that executive pen and slapping it right across the face of the immigrants who worked hard and paid a lot of cash to get here the right way. What do you say to them? Because they want their money back, and it's offensive to them.
Yeah. Elizabeth, I think those people are proud to be Americans. And the fact of the matter is, the Senate legislation that was passed, again, in bipartisan fashion, would have actually made some progress in reforming our legal immigration system to make it just a little bit easier and less onerous for people who are trying to come to this country. It also would have set up a path to citizenship for those people who are living in the shadows. And what it would have done is it would have made those people pay taxes. It would have made them submit to a criminal background check, and also would have put them in the back of the line. So it would have been not just fair to those people who came to this country legally, it actually would make it easier for people who are trying to do the right thing and trying to follow the law to do exactly that. And look, the people that we're talking about right now are people who work in the same building that we work in. These are the people who send their children to the same schools that our children attend. These are the people who worship in the same churches that we do. So the president believes that we need to restore some accountability to this system. And the truth is, you know, I know my Republican friends on Capitol Hill like to talk about amnesty. The truth is, the closest thing we have to amnesty right now is doing nothing. And that's what House Republicans are doing.
But why would the president not hear the American people, particularly after the midterms, and allow the newly elected officials to get together and put forward a plan? And then, moving forward with the new Congress, why not at that point? Why not at that point, if nothing came forward and nothing could be agreed upon, then use executive action? It would actually seem more justified than here. It just seems like a political move.
Well, Elizabeth, the Speaker of the House was actually asked a question 2 or 3 days after the election. He was asked directly if he intended to bring up common sense bipartisan immigration reform in the next Congress, and he wouldn't even commit to doing that. So the truth is, Elizabeth, if he changes his mind and he decides he's ready to sit down and work with Democrats and Republicans and the administration on common sense immigration and on a common sense immigration reform proposal, the president would be happy to do that. We'll roll up our sleeves. We'll get to work. We can hammer out a common sense agreement. There's a lot of common ground to be found here. Look, it'd be good for the economy, good for national security, good for strengthening border security. And if we can pass that piece of legislation, the president is ready to tear up the executive actions that he signed last night, sign that bill, and make that bill become law. But that's going to require House Republicans doing so.
That's a promise that you're making right now, because what it also is, it seems to be an admittance that this is a temporary fix, right, to put pressure on something coming forward. But tell me this, you're saying it's better for national security. We saw what happened last time at the border. You're promising this nation today that it's going to be safe, that we're not going to see the influx of illegals flushing into this nation, and we're not going to see lower-level jobs now being lost by those who have been here legally and for a long time in their family. The American worker is not threatened by this action. Is that what you're also promising?
Well, Elizabeth, what I'm telling you is that we actually see that immigration is illegal immigration at the southwest border is actually lower than it's been since the 1970s. And that's because there's been a historic investment in border security under this president, both in terms of manpower, in terms of fencing, and in terms of technology that's been deployed to the border.
Well, there was also change in deportation, Josh, right? So 2005, we know that the way that deportations were handled has shifted, right? So we understand that they don't have to go through, they don't have to see a judge, it doesn't take the time, they're actually just turned around right there at the border, they can come back, turn them around again, click, count that number. So the American people know those numbers can be warped to back up a point. I think what we're concerned about is this is a time where national security is ultimately really important. We're looking at ISIS right here, attempts to get into this nation may already be here. We're looking at a job pool that seems to be dwindling by the day when it comes to lower level jobs, and the average American worker and the legal immigrant who are fighting for those jobs now have 5 million people who are going to be giving them some stiff competition. That's true. You'd admit that.
Elizabeth, what's true is that the 11 million people who are already here are actually already competing for those jobs. And the fact that they are undocumented means that there are unscrupulous workers out there who can undercut legal immigrants by paying illegal immigrants, capitalizing on them, taking advantage of them, and actually paying them below minimum wage and not treating them right. So if we bring them out of the shadows, we're actually going to hold unscrupulous employers accountable and actually level the playing field. That will be good for workers all across this country.
How do you deal with the states? The states now are going to be facing the burden of trying to figure out who's been here for 5 years. You can promise that we can figure out who's been here for how long and not at a great cost to this nation and states?
Well, Elizabeth, what we can certainly do, and this would go a lot better if Congress would cooperate, and actually if House Republicans would act on the bipartisan legislation that passed in the Senate, we could have a much more orderly process for dealing with this. But you raised one other issue that's important for me to address. You raised the prospect of ISIL, and there have been some who have suggested that ISIL has actually succeeded or is actively trying to encroach across our border, on our southern border. That's just not true. There is no intelligence to indicate that that's the case. But the fact of the matter is we have more boots on the ground on our southern border than we ever have in our history under President Obama. There's more fencing on our southern border than we ever have had in our history under President Obama. There's more technology in the form of drones and other sensing equipment that is deployed to our southern border under President Obama. And the bipartisan Senate bill that we've talked a lot about that's blocked by House Republicans would actually double the boots on the ground on the southern border. That's something that the president wants to implement. But that's blocked by House Republicans, too. And that's a good indication. Again, I said this before, but it's true. The closest thing we have to amnesty right now is doing nothing. And that's exactly what House Republicans are doing.
Well, the Latino community and Hispanic community has been waiting a long time. They were promised action legally through Congress, and it was by the president in 2009. This seems to be a quick fix. They're not feeling it right now. I appreciate the conversation. Josh Earnest, White House Press Secretary. Hope to continue this as things move forward. And I'm going to hold you that promise. So if a good plan comes forward, the president is going to tear this up. That's making news today. Josh, thank you.
It is making news. Elizabeth, when he does that bill signing ceremony, I hope you come to the White House for it.
You know what? If that's an invitation, I'll consider it.
That sounds good.
Okay. Great talking to you, Josh.
Have a good weekend.
Thank you. You too.